Actually did have a
late.
thing.
Well, it's too late. It's too late. We're
It is
live.
too
We have to
late.
talk about it,
I
ladies
really
and gentlemen. We are late because I didn't get done with work till 7 on Mountain Time, and I was not expecting quite that late at night. And people were talking, and it was too good. It was too good. So we jumped. We went live, so you guys could check out all the goodness out there. It is Wednesday. It's the Mattriarchy. No theme song today because we're jumping in on a theme tangent on runaway rails that you can't hold back. Video game movies, and Twitless here. Twitless, he says, can you guys believe this? He says backstage, he says, Detective Pikachu, it's mid. It's mid. So
okay,
go ahead.
I need to clarify that point.
Hold up.
Let me clarify.
I will back up Twitless's point too.
Well, I want him to finish it online first.
Detective Pikachu is only mid because on the balance of it. Detective Pikachu has like some of the most fantastic first and second acts of any video game adaptation or any film of its ilk that I could think of. But the third act is so bad that it drives so off a cliff so badly that it drags down the rest of it. I went to the brew group with my buddies and we all came to the same conclusion. We're like, what the hell was that ending? Which is what happened after the climax of the movie, and it like ruined a good chunk of what we were enjoying. Not to completely ruin it, but if Detective Pikachu is mid, which I kind of think it is, it's because it drives right off the side of a building in that final conclusion.
Okay, the ending was exactly what I thought it was going to be.
I say that as a fan of Mewtwo as my favorite Pokemon.
Yeah.
Okay, I will actually.
That's a weird take, but okay.
I will throw my hat in the ring here and take some of the attention off Twitless by just pointing out that I have never even seen Detective Pikachu.
Okay.
Well, not seeing something is more fair than probably Twitless's take. I actually can't think of something that was adapted better. No, I can think of something that was adapted better, but most people haven't seen the movie, and it was a Lara Croft Tomb Raider starring Angelina Jolie. Actually, just is 100% a Tomb Raider story.
Yes,
and it's actually a shame that most people haven't seen it.
Dude,
it was a popular movie back when it came out.
Dude, you're not 100% wrong, but it's okay.
Anyway. The issue is more of a movie, not the story.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, everything that happened in Angelina Jolie's Tomb Raider movie should happen in a Tomb Raider movie, but it still was terrible, and it shouldn't have.
Yeah. Well, I'm just looking at it as an adaptation. If I'm looking at it as a movie, it wasn't a good movie, but as an adaptation.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, first of all,
I will settle this. The best video game adaptation is Sonic the OVA.
So
okay, I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Without that one just beats it all. Nothing beats Sonic OVA.
Okay. Anyway, back to the thing is, I don't understand. I understand the words that you're saying with Pikachu, with Detective Pikachu, but this is why I wanted to have the conversation live. Is like I don't know what on earth you're talking about. Like your description, it
doesn't seem like we watched the same movie.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're here just trying to describe like Daredevil, and I watched Detective Pikachu. So I'm
okay.
He doesn't like the Skybeam.
No, it's not just the Skybeam. It's the fact the story was set up to have a mystery, and it was set up to have a particular set of stakes. And if you are familiar with the game, it does have like it doesn't do the sort of like Transformers-esque
we're gonna find evil beings, guys.
And then on top of that, like a whole bunch of the stuff that you were invested in started just to fall apart with like, oh yeah, I'm Mewtwo and I can merge souls of people in Pokemon, and I pulled that out of my arse, and it's just so stupid, and it really just like it was like being in a car. It was like being on a roller coaster, and I'm like, I'm enjoying this ride. I'm waiting for this mystery to kind of and it was like completely being derailed, and I was like, oh, now it's this generic, retarded action fight scene with a bunch of goofy nonsense that doesn't make any sense, that has not been established, and it really comes out of left field. And I say that as Mewtwo is my favorite Pokemon.
Mewtwo is a psychic type, right?
He's not a soul type. It's like ghost type. Pokemon has a very specific afterlife scenario.
No, psychic type. He's like mind control thing.
Yeah. A mind control thing I could have maybe bought, But merging the physical and spiritual forms of people and Pokemon into a single form without setting that up on any level, it was just stupid. It was retarded. And like I said, and they did it. You could tell that the creators of the film needed to have an epic, this like the stakes, the world is at stake, and as opposed to just being like in the game, it was just like it was the typical kind of whodunit and the bad and set right. And it was like
you almost went
to have the.
You went into the Shadow Realm there for a minute, Twitless.
Oh, did I? Okay. Let me start.
Okay. So maybe my lack of playing the video games, because I have no interest in Pokemon as a video game. I played the closest I ever got was I played Pokemon Go for a little while, and Pokemon Snap back in the Nintendo 64 days. But having not had that experience or what have you, maybe it's me as a filthy casual that I can't understand anything that you're talking
about. I've played like 95% of Pokemon games, including Detective Pikachu.
So Metal.
Lots of movies get flabby in the third act. It's not an uncommon problem.
I know. It had such a good first two acts that the third act being so bad really like made me just and the people I went with, it wasn't just me, but we were just like, geez, that third act.
Okay, so Metal, do you
all
disagree?
Scratching our heads.
Do you disagree with Twitless's take of the third
for
act?
the most part, and I actually get why. So it's the problem is it's supposed to be adapting the game Pokemon World at wide. So it's not just an adaptation of Detective Pikachu, the game, but it's also supposed to be like the continuity that the Pokemon games take place in. And this is actually where they tipped the line. They also started dipping into the anime world a little bit because this type of like soul switching, melding stuff happens all the time in the cartoon. It's happened to Ash before. He's even become a ghost a few times. And it's all just very weird, and they did step over a line there to a degree. But also, my bigger problem with the movie, even though I loved it, I gave it like an 8 out of 10, was that they took it and they made the reveal of what was supposed to be in the second Detective Pikachu game in this movie, because in the game they didn't actually reveal that the Pikachu was his dad yet.
Ooh.
But it's Ryan Reynolds. You got to have that big payoff.
Yeah. I mean, they hinted at it. If you were an older person playing the game, you knew. But they did not reveal it in a way that like maybe a younger kid would have known. That was actually supposed to be saved for the second one that they're still working on.
Okay. So now I feel
like that's a bigger sin.
Everybody's complaints, and I feel like as an integrated person again. So that's nice.
But one of the most inexplicably bad adaptions is Max Payne.
I can agree with that. That's awful.
So Max Payne was a grounded, gritty crime game, and for some reason,
the game I've just never played it.
For some reason, in the movie, they decided to layer in a supernatural element out of nowhere.
They did that with Jonah Hex. That's why I would never watch that damn movie. I love Jonah Hex, but the minute you put like soul guns in a Jonah Hex movie, just kill me now.
That's right up there with giving soul guns to Frank Castle.
Well, he was dead at the time. Anyway.
Jonah Hex is one of those things that, again, probably doesn't belong in a superhero universe.
Oh, I think he belongs just fine. Just like there's a guy that works at the mini mart that flips hot dogs for a living. You need to know where your lines draw at that point. You don't have to stick just because it happens in a superhero universe doesn't mean every day is a superhero day. You've got normal people doing normal jobs on the somebody's got to drive the subway, somebody's got to shine the shoes, somebody's got to push the button at the factory, in the
isekai anime, someone's got to drive the box truck that runs over children.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, well, somebody has to.
Somebody's got to do it. You ever realize every isekai begins with somebody else's worst day ever?
Yeah. He's like, oh my god, I just killed that kid.
That was they hit on that in Heroes, the first season of Heroes, where Hiro Nakamura, I think his name is, or whatever, I can't remember for sure, but he's where he goes to save a little girl, but somebody mentions that he saves the bus driver from having to hit the little girl. So,
yeah.
Yep. So anyway, that's not what we came to talk about. We
were here to talk about video game adaptations at all. We were here for a webcomic adaptation.
Yeah. Because
Cat's drinking whiskey.
Yeah. Not.
I can say from my own cat, they're not interested in drinking whiskey.
Yeah. So, but yeah, we are here to not talk about video game movies. We're here to talk about Lackadaisy, which I'm actually going to move Cartoonicus to the center spot up on the top here because this was what he wanted to talk about. So I'm going to basically just sit back here and listen to him go on about why Lackadaisy is awesome. And then if we wrap that conversation up and we have more we want to talk about, then we could talk about how Hitman was a way better movie than whatever movie Twitless thinks is awesome.
Sonic the OVA, I'm telling you, it is the best video game. It's definitely the best Sonic adaptation.
Actually,
oh my gosh,
that's a very good climax. Yeah,
it's top tier.
I've not seen that, so I can't comment. So
you could get on VHS at your grocery store back in the day.
Cool.
Or DVD. I'm trying to remember when that was.
I think I saw it on cable for the first time. Right. Oddly enough,
cable. That's
all right, Cartoonicus. You're gonna have to seize the reins here. We're very easily distracted.
Excuse me. Forgive me. I'm fighting a little bit of a cold tonight, and yet I have to be the one to speak. Anyway, yeah, I convinced poor Reese to give up his week off to do this, mainly because Lackadaisy, and it just doesn't so happens to be one of my favorite webcomics ever.
It would. I wonder why that is.
Oh, gee, I wonder what's so special about it.
Whiskey.
But
it is the water of life.
Let's start with what has everybody talking, right? And that is all of a sudden this little thing showed up on the internet. I'm going to put this up here.
What do you mean everybody's talking? It's just 1 million people.
I think it was up to 3 million last I saw.
At a certain point, I have heard that the actual Lackadaisy website crashed because there were so many people being driven to it from having watched the video. So if you don't know what it is, actually, can I do something?
Now the spirits are afoot. No, that is my foot. That's not what I meant. I can't see. Ah, there it is. You be out.
You can maximize the window so that it's full screen.
Yeah.
Don't like how we play? How about you stop spectating and throw in, Chef? Or do you have to worry about you getting sentimental about old times?
You have no idea what I went through to get this.
I have very good idea.
Oh, they had a Pro ZD in it.
Mm-hmm.
He gets around.
Rather unfortunately, we were sidetracked. The vehicle has been disabled. On the whole, the evening has not gone according to plan.
All right, so
that's a great way to end the trailer. That's amazing.
So this was a project that many years in the making. This actually goes all the way back to 2006, technically, if you include the comic. That's what, almost 20 years now.
Let's just start in 2008. Or did you start working on it in 2006?
It's copyrighted in 2008, which leads me to believe that she didn't copyright it until it was starting to get popular. But the website.
Yeah, but you can retroactively, technically, the second you publish something, there is an informal copyright, so you can as soon as it starts.
But if they have the registered copyright date, they may count that for legal purposes because that makes it easier.
Launch date was 2006. It looks like.
Yeah.
But if you do it that way, then when you're looking at rights in perpetuity, because perpetuity doesn't exist for copyright, but it stretches that out farther if you have a later date on the registered.
So yes, this is an animated pilot that came out. It was a full 30 minutes long.
Wow.
From what I originally perceived to be like, I thought they were just making a 5-minute, little miniature video out of a comic. But yeah, this comic goes back to 2006, where let's share that. Oops, sharing the wrong screen, and I stopped sharing it by accident. Sorry about that. Do this again. Where are you? All right, try that again. All right, well, this right here, written by, I should give credit here. This is an artist named the name of Tracy Butler. I don't know yet what she was doing before, but she's been doing this for almost 20 years now. And this right here was the first page. And oops, sorry, doing that wrong. This right here is the most recent page. I am 100% convinced that the success of this comic is mostly due to the artwork alone and the insane journey that it has come.
I might be a minority here. I actually do not like the new art direction. I think it was actually better in the previous versions.
You have to admit, it is impressive.
She's putting a lot of it's just rendering, I guess. I feel like we're crossing the territory into like Tumblr levels of over render though.
And, the lighting's fine. That's probably the best.
Well, I mean, you got to give it to her that she's keeping all of this within a rough. It's not exactly grayscale. She's using slight variations of color, but you generally have an overall color scheme.
It looks technicolored.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a temperature gradient.
I read volume 1. I enjoyed volume 1 stylistically. Once it start here, there was some beautiful pages. There were a couple spreads or splashes that were done pretty well, but then it started to just look like any old Tumblr art, I guess, just of a higher quality, I guess. And it started to lose, at least for me, some of the things that made it like, I don't know.
In my case, I think it's all beautiful. However, I did find myself wishing
this has more personality.
I did find myself wishing she hadn't gotten as good as she did because it was taking so long to upload even a single image. I mean, a single page.
That's the second point I want to bring up. This is something impressive. Reese is going to get maybe a little chuckle out of this. But Tracy Butler puts Ethan Van Sciver to shame when it comes to putting work out. It's been 2 years since she put out a page, and across over 20, almost 20 years of working on it, has only put out, there's 60-something pages in volume 1, 80-something pages in volume 2, so 200 pages total.
And a lot of that does have to do with time consumption.
She is slow.
Well, when you're doing work like that, yeah, you're slow.
No. Sorry.
I think there's something to be said for that too, because like a lot of times you look at big productions that have similar levels of quality, they have whole teams of people working on the stuff. So,
but here's the thing: if we look at even this, like you said, this has a.
Well, let me phrase it this way, because
I'm not saying that makes it okay. I'm just saying it makes it reasonable.
Let me try to be as generous as I can be, which is the fact that I think that Lackadaisy is a victim of its own vision, and it may be a little bit of a victim of its own success in that respect. So the vision for this comic is very ambitious. And one thing that I will give the creator a lot of credit for is the fact that she obviously puts a lot of, and she notes this in some of the strips of, the comic was generated off of her interest in history, I think in St. Louis specifically. And so she started doing a lot of just like research. And so the comic has a very authentic voice, and it's part of the intention of the work is to capture, it's kind of bizarre if you think about it, because she wants to use these highly fantastical characters and certain fantastical elements, I think, and then like merge it with sheer levels of historical
action.
Well, I was gonna say historical autism, which, like I said, an intense level of detail that doesn't just apply to, for example, scene setting, but cultural setting. And so she will invoke, a film, I think that was, at the time, references that characters would make culturally. And so, like I said, there's a high level of research that she puts into this, but the project itself, kind of like what Reese had mentioned, typically you would have, for a cinematic production, you'd have teams of people doing these things. And it's just her doing this. And so the comic is, it is a snail's pace. I think I remember clicking on this a couple times, and yeah, I don't think it's budged.
Well, no, it hasn't, because at the moment it is paused, and that's because of the film.
Which is another thing, which what I would say is a victim of its own success as an indie project. And this is something we could talk about, because again, I'm not trying to be too negative, but the fact that the comic hasn't been published in 2 years because the animated short came out. I mean, like 20 years. That's 2 decades. People who were children who, maybe liked this comic, they now have families.
Oh yeah,
of their own.
Yeah,
own kids.
Yeah, I'm in that boat myself.
Right. So
but I don't think anyone that liked my comic when they were children are still reading my comic.
I'm just saying it is an interesting. I find it to be a fascinating study and a fascinating look into the pros and cons. Matt C has been doing a lot of thinking along these lines recently about conceptualizing indie comics and indie IPs, I guess, indie properties. And I think Lackadaisy is a very interesting test case because there are things. It's been numerous. Sorry, it's been nominated for numerous awards. I think this thing was nominated for an Eisner. I don't think it won, but it was nominated, and I can see why. So, like I said, intense level of quality you see in the stuff that you get. Regardless of taste, like I said, I personally feel a certain way about the earlier work as opposed to the later work, but as a whole, Lackadaisy represents, I think, the very interesting things to talk about and think about when it comes to what it means to be successful in the indie scene and what the consequences of what that success might entail, and what the pros, I guess, of that, like the positives of getting success in the indie scene, but also what I think some of the negatives consequences. Because like I said, if you really like Lackadaisy and the story of Lackadaisy, like good luck to you. Your children will graduate high school by the time this story is maybe halfway done.
Well, here's a question I have: is if the artist does take so long to work on something of this high quality to scale, and somebody wants to buy the pilot, that means she's going to have to give up control of the IP to an art team to get her over the hump. And are they going to be able to get her over the hump and still maintain this artistic aesthetic? So This may be a very bright star that burns very quickly and then fizzles out.
Well, first it's burning very, very long and then quickly.
Yeah.
It's like
first gradually, then all at once.
So
I also want to point out that, like, as opposed to, and this is something that I know that people often criticize, like Stan Lee, for just like, shotgun writing, essentially. And there's definitely things to criticize about it, but when you look at his work overall, you can definitely see, I think, maybe growth in some areas. He definitely did different things at different times. He was able to, move on throughout his career and do different things. I think this is clearly a labor of love. This creator is like, this is this creator's life's work. This one IP, really.
Well, and for a while, she has been doing this professionally as her full-time job.
Yeah, she's
supported purely on things
Patreon.
like Patreon.
Yeah. She has a
that was part of the deal. She has a very dedicated fan base at this point.
Well, and that's one of the weird things for me that I find really weird is, coming back to the idea about propriety and getting stuff done. I guess if your fans are okay with a page every 6 months or whatever,
2 years
or whatever. Well, like I said, because I would imagine she probably works in spurts, right? Most people that keep a pace like that, they'll have some that you get a bunch done in a relatively short period of time, and then there's a dry spot, and then fits and spurts pretty common for that kind of thing. But if the fans are down for that, then I guess that's all okay. But it still seems like if you're making a living on it and you're only given a page every 6 months to 2 years, that it seems a lot to ask of fans. But of course, that's up to them to decide. It's their money, it's their life. They can just spend it how they want. So
I want to point out, though, that there are some other additional, I think, considerations when you sell your soul to a work like this. On the one hand, like I said, you get a level of craftsmanship. Like I said, look at the car. You look at some of these panels on this page, and although a more talented artist could probably do something, even better, even faster, you can tell this creator is making a labor of love out of this. She spent, hours, potentially days, however how long she took to, craft this stuff. There's something about a handmade table. You can get a table made much faster in many other ways, but when someone is taking a long time to craft it, and every single mark in the wood was a deliberate choice, a shaving of the knife. There is something to be said for that, and there's something that we can appreciate in that dedication to a craft, and that's something I want to say is definitely in the positive column. However, there's an asterisk and a caveat to this, which is the work becomes your life, and you'll get very wrapped up in it. And so I think that there are some things to be cautious of, because if one work is your life's work, it's going to be hard for you to take criticism on it. For example, Doug TenNapel, fires and forgets, I think, a little bit. And so you can kind of say, hey, I like that one, or I didn't like that one. He'll be like, whatever. I'm working on, the next 2 or 3. So no one of his works, I think, gets him too obsessed. Whereas, again, thinking about Ethan Van Sciver, Cyberfrog is becoming his life's work, and so it changes your perspective on your own work. It changes some other things, I think, as a consequence. And I think it also alters your ability in that regard. If your life's work is one work, if you spend your entire life carving one statue, that might be a hell of a statue, but heaven help you if a crack ever develops in it. So
you stand cast it and make a new one out of bronze. That's the ticket.
Well,
I think I'm kind of like Doug in this way, where it's like, if somebody's like, hey, I don't like this story, it's like, that's fine. I've got like 3 or 4 other ones you might like.
That's what I'm saying.
It's okay if you don't like one.
I think it's healthy to do that. And I think it actually makes you a better creator in some ways, because you go, oh, that was a movie. That was a story I made 10 years ago. I'm on my 11th story now. And I've developed in many different, that's what I was talking about. Stan Lee with his shotgun approach early on, definitely lots of things to critique if we're being technical about it. Guy clearly got better as he went. Abigail says, the piece is not your baby. There is something about, I think, this.
I was gonna say that's part of the danger of being a creative person, because it in a lot of ways it's easy, because it's not your baby, it's more than that, it's you, right? And I'm not saying that's a healthy or the correct way to look at it, but it's pretty easy to think that way, especially if you're of the idea that because that's one of the things with the modernist concept of art, is that it's about self-expression, right? It's about you leading into that, as opposed to the idea that you're reaching beyond you, that pre-modernist idea that you're reaching beyond you into something greater. So if somebody else doesn't appreciate the truth in your art, then maybe that's not you they're attacking, because you're not the one on display, right? it's your talent, but it's not your message. But if you're a person that believes that like art's main purpose is self-expression, and somebody doesn't like your art, well, then it's really easy to take it personally.
Well, another more probably a better example of what I was trying to describe, like with Chris Claremont when he worked on X-Men for almost 2 decades, and he basically describes them as if they were his children. And I think with the benefit of hindsight, like now, I think he's been able to let go. But I think at the time it was very painful, and probably even, I think there was alluded to fights that, happened as the new generation basically came to play with the toys. And he had wrapped himself up in these characters to the point where it's like, Cyclops Scott Summers is like family to me, and so I'm going to write him, into the sunset like a family member, and I'm going to treat these characters as if they're extended family members. In a sense, it was his baby, and I think that leads to certain, qualities that are good, but it's a double-edged sword. It cuts in 2 ways, and some of that is negative. So it's one thing I want to talk about and at least put under, as we celebrate some of the things that Lackadaisy is doing very well. I do also want to, as a counterpoint, to raise these things as we are all indie creators ourselves, and many of our audience are indie creators. And one thing that I do want to caution indie creators about, because there are indie creators who may be listening to this, and so I'm hoping that the person who needs to hear this hears this. It is much better to just put your story out and iterate over time and then move on to the next story than it is to spend 20 years working on, this is my opus, because chances are most of the time your first work isn't going to be your best work.
So you usually lack the ability to even tell what your best work could be, because you have to refine that over a long period of time.
It's like, I'm trying to remember who said it, but like, it's something I've been laughing about recently. There's a quote from somebody, and I can't recall who it was never write till you're 40.
I hate that. Yeah, I hate that, though.
The idea is that before you have anything to say, you have to have something you've lived, and like, I don't think that's a hard and fast rule, but I do think it's worth acknowledging, because I've been writing the whole time, but there are a lot of things that I thought and of opinions that I held very passionately when I was in my early 20s. And my beliefs haven't changed, but my opinions have changed drastically.
But that doesn't mean you shouldn't. That doesn't mean you shouldn't express yourself when you're younger.
I think you just shouldn't become too attached to any of your opinions before then. That's probably a better way.
I do want to counter that just a little bit, because there's something Mike Barron has alluded to, and he says that no one should write a novel until they're like 40, because you haven't lived until then. And I disagree with that strongly. Yeah. Although I agree. I agree that he may have a point that maybe you're not ready till you're 40 to write a good novel. But if you wait until you're 40 to start writing, you will run into another rule, which is this: every writer has to write like 100,000 words of garbage before you get good at it anyway. So you're going to wait. So you're going to wait till you're like halfway through your life to then begin. No. Yeah. Write stuff now.
I think the bigger point that I lean on with something like that is the idea of humility, right? Is that, like I said, you have to write before you're any good. So, accept the fact that everything you're writing in the beginning, it's a work in progress. You're gonna have to hammer it out. You're gonna have to keep working at it.
Let me phrase it this way as well.
It's going to be different for different people. That's the real thing, right? Like, because you could look at Mary Shelley, who put out Frankenstein when she was 18. She was encapsulated in a world where her husband was a writer, and she was always surrounded by other writers and stuff like that.
Not her husband.
Her paramour. Paramour is a better word.
Her husband was a bookkeeper in London, and she ran off on him to go have somebody else's baby.
You mean her orgy partners?
Yeah, but regardless, like her life partner, the one that she actually liked, was a writer, and she was always surrounded by writers, and she was in this culture of being around writers. So she lived a very different life than many people. But it's going to vary from person to person, depending on, like what your experiences are.
I want to go back to this point though, which is the fact that like there's a story that I've been meaning to do that I've been sitting on. Cartoonicus knows of it, so don't spill the beans on it, Cartoonicus. But like, there's a story that he and I have talked about since I was in like a sophomore in college, at least, if not before. And if I had published the story then, it would have been out and it would have been in a particular form. But like, if I approach that story now, it's not going to be the same story. And I don't even know if that makes it better or worse, but it's completely different. So if you sit on your stories too long, you run the risk of overcooking them, which we've talked about a little bit on this show. And an overcooked story can have just as many problems as an undercooked story. So you spend like half your life, here's my opus, and you've overcooked it, and then the story just isn't as good because you spent too much time in the oven. Or secondly, you miss the moment. There are certain stories, I think some creators have mentioned this, but there are certain stories you really need to seize the fire when you're in that point in your life. There are certain stories of angry youth that you kind of need to tell when you're an angry youth. Okay. And once you're 50, you're not in the same spot, and you can't really channel the same emotions that you did. You have different experiences. You kind of have this sort of like Blake kind of like songs of innocence versus songs of experience. And so you kind of, in some songs you need to sing out of your innocence, and some of them you should sing more out of experience. But if you wait too long, you only get one of those things. So I just want to throw that out there. So Lackadaisy got some wonderful things to it. We'll definitely talk about those, but I do want to put this out to creators who may be daunted by this and go, oh, wow, here's Lackadaisy. I now need to spend 15 years like developing my property so that I can release one page every 2 years. No. Create often. Listen, endorses Blankets confirmed. I will smack you in the face with a copy of Blankets.
Now, what I want to say after reading this a little bit and getting a little grounded in how this is all set up, I think it's interesting paralleling this to VisiPop and what VisiPop has done, because she was basically just a Tumblr cartoonist. And so she didn't heavily invest in the artwork early. So it's much easier for her to make the growth into becoming a professional animator and running a professional animation team. There's not as much investment in the craftsmanship as this does. This is a Swiss watch of craftsmanship in the art styling.
I don't know if I'd go Swiss watch. It's definitely up there.
So let's back up just a little bit. I want to address the chat.
It's a sculpture.
William Blake wasn't in comics.
Yes, he was. Oh, I'll fight you on that one.
What? Okay, they didn't even exist yet. So okay, first of all, I want to shout out to Dave and Abigail, and Edming says that he is at an AOE2 tournament, but I don't even know what that is. So good luck.
Age of Empires 2.
Oh, okay. There you go. Well, there. Other people know. Good luck. Hope that goes.
That's
well
some
for
intense
you.
stuff too. Age of Empires too. When you get into multiplayer.
Like,
so
wait, that's
also I would like to point out that that I do want to take a little bit of time to talk about the thumbnail. First of all, typically I do the thumbnails with help from Abigail's thumbnail art that she made for us a couple of years ago or a year ago, whatever it was. This stuff. One I asked because this was Cartoonicus's dream to have this conversation or idea or whatever you want to call it. And I said, dude, I'm real busy right now. Could you make the thumbnail? And he's like, I'd love that. So he made the thumbnail, and then he put me in a cat dress. And I wasn't a fan, but it happened, and it's funny. So it's funny, and so I have to let it stand because I have a rule: you always follow the joke. And well, there you go. That's.
I mean, it's cat themed all around.
It is. It's horrifying. So there you have it. It's a little bit of Python-esque humor. Recent address.
Hopefully, I'll ever be invited back here again.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that's never happened, but
let's not tonight.
Oh, okay. So getting back to how Lackadaisy. No, for me, it wasn't just that she is an expert, colorist, renderer, etc. What I noticed immediately was the intense attention to detail on the actual understanding of anatomy and expression. She puts stuff out like this, right? And it's like,
good God.
Yeah, right. Look, every single possible angle you could draw someone at. The experiments of expression on every possible level. And I was literally writing her just saying, like, why aren't you working for Disney? Okay. Like, are you an animator? Do you have an animation background?
Because Disney doesn't like nice things.
From what I can tell, it doesn't exist. I do not understand how this person gained these skills, to be honest.
She worked in video game design, so she's done some other industry work.
And little did I know, I'm pretty sure at that point they'd already started trying to aim for, getting this turned into a show. Apparently, they went after, possibility after possibility, and were basically told, yeah, not going to happen. You'll be better off if you just create your own thing. So they said, okay.
I'll give you the reason why that is. But I do want to point out something, and I definitely will reiterate this. One thing I will definitely concede, definitely acknowledge. I think one of the biggest strengths of this comic, I would actually say one of the weaknesses, is some of the panel layouts and some of the not the background work, but like the sort of like shot work. It's a little bland at times, and it kind of ends up being the sort of like Tumblr-esque just comic. It ends up being very flat. But there's one thing that is not flat, and it is her expression work. Yeah. And I think it's interesting that even to maybe notice this, but we have a female creator whose greatest strength is bringing the emotions out in her characters. And some of the best moments in Volume 1 that I read, and I think this may just cover the comic as a whole, is these little pregnant moments that are just like a pause and then a very poignant facial expression that a character will have. Mm-hmm. And so, as you can see on this page, it's
trying to give you some examples there.
Yeah, no, like exactly. I think there's several on this page, but her expression work that's where I'll say Swiss Watch. In terms of Swiss Watch craftsmanship, facial expressions, she is an artist of expression.
And I found myself trying to study her myself, for my understanding of how to design and draw characters. One of the interesting things is, and this, she's been asked time and time again by people, why cats, right? Why are we doing this story about prohibition in St. Louis in the 1920s with
why not cats?
Characters, right? Well,
that should be the only answer. It's like, why not cats?
I had the same question, by the way. There was a moment I was just like, seriously, why cats?
I have a very interesting theory about that, and that is when you're dealing with anthropomorphic characters. And I wish I could remember this term, but there's a term for anthropomorphic animals that look like the animal, sure, but they don't necessarily have the traits of that animal. Mickey Mouse, for example, is a real great example. He doesn't really do anything that a mouse does, for instance. He doesn't live in a hole in the wall. He doesn't even
he doesn't eat the walls.
Right.
He doesn't. I mean, doesn't he?
He does not have any mouse-like abilities. He doesn't put his teeth to use. You don't even see.
What about his scat? Do you have to sweep that up one of the counters?
And then there are things like,
he will once in a blue moon use the tail that he has. It's like the extent of being an animal that's like Mickey Mouse.
Has he? I've never seen it.
Yeah,
especially in the older stuff. But again, it's a very rare thing.
And it's usually as a mark of emotion.
All right, Abigail brings up something I have to mention, which is Eek a Mouse, Minnie Mouse. This is actually a moment.
Yes.
that Art
Yeah.
Spiegelman had to like wrestle with, because he wrestled with every panel of Mouse. But this was something he had to address when he had Vladek and Anya in a cellar run into rats, like actual rats, and it was part of the story that they actually like, oh, there was these giant rats. And so he's like, oh crap, what do I do? Because he kind of avoided pets and other animals for a while to just keep his symbolism on point. But suddenly it was actually a part of the story that there was literally a rat here, and they're mice, and it's like crap, what do I do with that? So it's
sorry to distract.
Well, so no, because actually that's the perfect segue. Because there are other animals in this comic, but they are all done as actual animals. The only characters are all cats.
Yeah.
And they too, like, they never refer to themselves as cats, right? You never hear the word cat or feline or anything else. They're all drawn with tails and claws and stuff, but you're never going to see them use them. They never seem to exhibit any cat-like tendencies, or all the things that cats are known for. Anyone who owns cats knows the crazy antics they get into. And then early on in the comic, she starts doing stuff like this. There are tons of these where she is drawing these characters as humans, and you almost get a taste for what it would be like if this is how it had been done. This would basically be any old gangster movie like we've seen 1,000 times before. And then I think about how dark the story is, how violent it can be sometimes, and I think perhaps the idea is that this would actually be get really depressing really fast if you didn't have nice, fun, cutesy, comical characters. Oops, should hold off on that page. With these insane, lovable personalities who you can get behind. And you know what? Why not just make them really cute, animal characters while we're at it?
I do think it's for flavor.
I agree / disagree with this. So Matt C, we got some interesting engagement for chat, by the way. So we have 7 in chat. Good to see you, man. Hope you're enjoying Age of Empires. Jim Tuner's on point with the jokes as always. One thing I do want to point out, though, this is something I struggled with the work. It's actually something I think is a bit of a misstep, but it also, to go back, explains Cartoonicus very easily why this was never made into something apart from an indie work. This, and Matsy will probably like hearing about this. In Lackadaisy is a creation that can only exist as an indie production because of its chosen, I would almost say, paradox of tone. You have Disney-esque, not Disney comics. We were talking about this earlier. This is not really Disney comics, where it's not like Karl Barks or anything, but it's definitely evoking the Disney animated ethos and the Rats of Nim and so on, like Fern Gully, stuff like that. And it's evoking and invoking that ethos, which programs the audience to have certain expectations regarding the content. And Butler follows through when it comes to her comedic beats. Many of the pages will have a kind of like a comedic moment.
She has some brilliant writing at times.
But she mixes that with, first off, the entire story surrounds liquor. And you're not going to make a story surrounding liquor and making that in any capacity that children would want to see it. Children want to see this. Children go, ooh, that's something for me. And then it's like, what's the story about? Liquor. Okay, well, that's a no sell right there. So that's number one. Number two, because it's kind of got the 1920s flapper aesthetic, you also have the sort of like flings and romantic affairs going on. That's a no-go. And thirdly, you've got... and this is where the tone gets really weird, where the story seems to want to have its cake and eat it too regarding how it handles violence. And maybe we should hold off on how the story handles violence.
We were talking about that backstage, actually.
The way the story handles violence is a puzzle. But it also is, I would think, reason number 3 or 4 why this would never ever get made as anything but an indie project.
Larry, do you want to repeat how you described the entire comic earlier?
I described it as an R-rated Disney adventure, but then we talked about it's like a hard PG-13, realistically, with its violence. And the two main male lead characters are almost inexplicably violent, but they're violent on a dime.
Yeah. I would say, in fact, I'm going back to this page. Right. Yeah, this, it does not hold back on the fact that it's about gangsters ultimately, right? Here we go.
Well, I think you're about to be even more confused, Piz.
There are a lot of guns and a lot of gunfire and even some blood at times, but so much of the actual violence somehow ends up happening either off screen or is, the characters make it out alive, but bruised and beaten.
See, but that's where it gets weird because it bleeds together. Literally, it bleeds together two different ethoses, I would say. It bleeds together the ethos of Disney, but here's the problem, right? And this is where I actually think this leads to some tonal confusion, because there are moments where characters will have comedic moment and like, oh, guns being shot, and I just kind of dodge the bullets like a normal kind of like animated feature where no one gets hurt. And then
you mean like a Marvel movie?
And then a character gets shot in the head.
Like a Marvel movie?
No, shot in the head. Headshots don't happen in Marvel movies. You don't get to see there's blood trickling down from the headshot. But we get that in Lackadaisy, and it's like, what the hell? In addition to that, we also get many references to how many pieces did that guy get chopped into. We fed him to the pigs to get rid of the body, and it's like, and then it's like da 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 da. Vaudeville.
Yeah, it does use some.
It is tonal whiplash, and it is in my opinion, it is a misstep for the work. Seven brings up something very important that we should mention, which is Black Sad, which I think is a very similar work. In fact, when I saw the latest pages of Lackadaisy, I was confusing it with Black Sad. I'd forgotten what Black Sad was, but I was like, I've seen this before. I was thinking of Black Sad. So if you are interested in Lackadaisy, Cartoonicus, are you familiar with Black Sad? You should definitely check it out.
I'll check it out.
But it is essentially, I think, a very similar kind of like noir Cats.
But I don't necessarily have a problem with the back and forth tone, because the tone is very much... It's like how we joke about there being a Marvel tone with, the jokes and the action, and then all of a sudden there's an evil laser destroying the world. The tone makes sense because of the context of the work. And this tone makes sense because of the world it's set in, because of the old 20s gangster movies and the old gangster movies it's trying to be evocative of. But it's not something that you would expect normally out of this sort of cartoon thing, which is, I think, where you and I kind of part ways on this. For the world, this tone makes sense, and the characters are just fun for me as a layer of paint. But for you, it's a different taste.
I don't think it destroys the work, but to me, it was a misstep, and it leads, like I said, to some tonal confusion that I go.
I think the bigger question, right, for why it doesn't get adapted outside of indie is audience confusion, right?
Yeah.
When you have these type of animals, you're thinking, oh, pitch it to kids, but this is not a story you can pitch to very young kids.
But kids would be the ones who would want to watch it. That creates a huge problem. Yeah. So what I will say is that
the thing about that is, though, like I understand that being on a thought today, but like Bugs Bunny, the Looney Tunes were not written for children.
Well, and that's the thing, this comic being pretty much run by Patreon, that it wasn't kids supporting it. And 20 years later, even if there were
from
any...
the perspective of the corporate world.
That's what I was saying.
I don't think this way, but this is why
you can totally...
Because a corporation wouldn't do this.
Yeah, you can totally slap something together like this for... You can totally slap something together for this in a Adult Swim kind of context. The only problem is the corporation has a limited scope of what they would use in adult animation.
Exactly, and that's the problem.
So, quick question from the chat. Jim Tuner says, so it's like Bendis USA versus Murder Inc., but I'm not familiar with that work at all, so I can't comment on that. Do you guys know what that book there is?
I do not.
I don't, and I'm afraid to ask because my experience with Bendis is like, hey, I kind of like him here and there, and then he goes to killing my entire desire to read comics ever again. So
yeah,
oh, that's right.
So
anyway, I do.
Matt C is scolding me personally for not knowing what Black Sad is, but I don't. I've never heard of Lackadaisy until
Look, if you want an animal comic, read Beasts of Burden. That's the top tier one. Beasts of Burden is the only animal comic you need to read, and you're good.
Isn't that the horror movie?
I think Roadrunner Beep Beep is probably where
also read Disney comics. Actual straight
any
Disney
of
comics.
The ones. Uncle Scrooge is the best. Go back and
read
old
actually,
Uncle
and
Scrooge.
I just did a review. If you guys are interested in seeing a hot take review I did a few months ago on a Disney comic that I think was imported from Italy. It is a Minnie Mouse spy adventure that is hilarious, and you can check it out on my channel after you watch this.
Seven is asking us if does this veer into furry territory, and I would say that it doesn't really. I would say it flirts once or twice.
It might attract furries, but that's probably it.
Yeah, there was a couple romance scenes, but they were very, I'd say, as tastefully done as you could do with anthropomorphic animals who are having flings and affairs. I think part of it is you can see it right here, and this is another thing that I will give credit to Butler. One of the problems with furries. As an art, great. I now have to talk about who made me talk about furries. Seven. I am mad. It is your fault.
We
need
to clip these things out.
It's
we need to clip these things out.
Anthro, not furry.
Yeah.
So let me point this out. Is the fact that
I want to, before you do that, I just want to stop and take the time and just this moment to appreciate like your tone when you said the thing about
furries.
Because I realized I was gonna have to talk about furries. So alrighty. So here's the thing: is that when it comes to, because I realized not only as a student of form as I am, I realized that I was going to have to start applying my scholarship knowledge of form to furries. And like I said, that moment of me taking the deep breath was like, oh crap, here I am doing this. So the aesthetics that we're looking at here, if you look at these pictures, is you can tell that the character is meant to have a certain, a beauty to her. If we look at Mitzi, furries will almost always, and you can even see this in what our Crumb's work becomes. But the thing with furries is that it is a degenerate culture that is focused specifically on sex. And when your artwork does that over time, what will happen, especially to the female form, is that the face will shrink. And everything else that is capable of being sexualized will inflate like a balloon. And so the more that the Coomer brain
unless it's trans furry,
the more that the Coomer brains focus on Coomerism, which is basically what furry art is, which and you'll see this. Pull up if you see furry art or a furry comic, what you'll see is a character where it's all of the parts that you can sexualize are like, it's like someone took a bicycle pump and inflated it way past to the point. And every part you can sexualize basically gets inflated like that. And so
effect.
I'm just telling you, if you're looking at those types of aesthetics, that's not what you get here. Yeah. She is very clearly sticking to her register of Disney cartoon animal. So you don't get anything past what I would say gadget from Rescue Rangers. So you have to be a real degenerate, to go that far.
Oh, well, and there's probably plenty of fan art there that I will not.
Stop.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Gadgets
like I said, it would attract
figures of furry fan art
for them.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, you may attract that. What I'm saying is that, like, the aesthetic of furryism is something that takes animals and human sexuality, and then, like most Coomer art, just basically inflates the part, which like I said, which really bizarre. This is something that I think Reese can relate to, is the fact that it ends up undermining the concept of beauty at a certain point, because what ends up happening is, like I said, you'll see these pictures of women with like shrunken heads and like breasts that go out like 80, that are like 200 pounds, and everything else on them is, like I said, they end up looking like balloon animals. And it's a weird distortion. You get and something you can see it happen in R. Crumb's art. You know, his feet, how he depicts the female form is essentially what a balloon animal is, and the balloon parts are just the parts that he can sexualize. So thank you, Seven, for making me do that.
Well, I
don't think anybody made you.
Even all the way, late into the comic, when these characters all became a little taller and lankier and, less cute and fluffy, that never, they never went to that extent. Trying to find a female character here for you.
Well, they still just have a normal, like, cartoon character form of a human body, just with animal features.
Right.
Like, they're still within the same form they were before.
Yeah.
I mean, you know who this would appeal to? The audience of people who want SWAT Cats to come back.
I did like SWAT Cats. SWAT Cats was really good.
I heard it was really good. I was a little old for SWAT Cats.
It had a great theme song, too.
I think I saw like one clip of one episode once of SWAT Cats.
I used to watch that every time it came on. That was a good show.
So this is the point in the comic that Cartoonicus can walk us through. But this is clearly where the artist has embraced a different type of aesthetic, and she has leveled up in her ability to color. But in addition to that, I feel like something in the artwork has been lost, which is kind of an interesting trade-off in my opinion.
I do agree that the sepia has a certain charm to it, and I don't know that I would have appreciated it until I got the idea to grayscale that first bit of Forces stuff, and how that changes the look of the meteor coloring that I did. So I think that there is something in the sepia that has a charm that the color does not. But I don't think the color's bad either. It's just like it would be something if you could make all of, like, it's I don't know. It's not the same work when it has that much of a tonal shift.
Her previous work was much more in the vein of the comic, the bande dessinée, literally in terms of the strip. And so a lot of the pages would even just read like tiers of strips.
Yep.
Matt C is mentioning, and I do agree that she's essentially adopting just the comic book page, but I'm afraid that actually is a weakness, because I don't think she's as good at comic book page layouts. And so the strip, just sticking with the strips, actually, I think works better for what her strengths are. I don't know. Like I may be in the minority on that point. Other people may say, no, seriously, this is way better, and that's totally fine.
Let's throw a gradient map over this and see what it looks like in sepia.
Well, and that's the thing. So I think she might have been holding back at least somewhat for a time, because for a long time, even when it was back in the sepia days, she was doing color stuff like this. And a lot of these, they were still really high fidelity. And probably what happened is that people started loving these color works, and they started pushing her to, get more of it into the normal story.
That's why you don't listen to your audience, ladies and gentlemen.
It depends on your audience. Hey, audience, if you're out there, just let me know you exist.
I'm just kidding.
I think it also depends on the story. Like, as an artist, I think you probably should have like some stories that you're just like, no, this is mine. I'm doing it my way. And you can also at the same time have other stories. This is why you should branch out into multiple stories too. But you have stories like, okay, this I'm doing for the audience, not for me. It's for the audience.
Just keep making comics. Just
okay, cool. Seven agrees with me, so I'm right.
I will say this, and that is, here we have Ivy Pepper, who is like the cutest thing ever dropped on this planet, right? My absolute favorite character in the entire comic.
Of course it is.
But even that pales in comparison to what happened when they decided to simplify her for the animated piece.
I even know why she's your favorite character. Oh my gosh, this is like so you.
Because she's adorable?
No, because she's like little sister syndrome, and that's like your thing.
Anyway, I'm just saying
that got weird.
The animated translation of this, I think, worked out even better in the end. And of course, they totally had to simplify it down again, which is the interesting rebirth of this whole process. That even though they have to put 50 times as much work into it now, and like 160 people, at the same time, the entire art style has gotten this kind of reinvention that now I presume we will be following into the future.
Okay, right. Let me clarify. Cartoonicus just never had a little sister, and he's like, "Oh, it would be cool to have a little sister." That's it.
Okay.
I'm a cat person. I like cute. Surprise, surprise.
Thanks for the clarification there, Fizz. That helps out a lot.
Cartoonicus, why exactly do the main two characters get so excitable around firearms and explosives?
Okay, so this is spoken from someone who has seen the pilot but has not gotten far enough in the comic yet. The answer is actually the character, and where's my main characters again here? Bring this back up.
We're talking about Freckles, the one who goes crazy.
Yes, you're talking. Well, he's talking about two.
No, they both go crazy.
I can see why you would think that, because he has those sticks of dynamite and stuff in his hand. Rocky went through some stuff, or he's about going to go through some stuff in the comic that you'll get to that set him a little touched in the head, but ultimately he's more just obsessed with theatrics. And I think that's what they were doing there.
He's the trickster figure.
He wants to think of himself as the hero, who can just get out there and, play his little violin and impress the entire world into submission, right? No,
That's not usually how it works for fiddlers.
It is really Freckle here, his younger cousin, whose whole deal is that he is the smallest, most pathetic, shy little nothing of a character who you've ever seen, who's so good as well of a person. He was trying.
How is Freckle not your favorite character?
He was trying to get again because cute always beats good every time.
Okay. Oh, that's a new one. Okay.
I liked the bartender because he was done with everybody's shit.
Yeah.
I would like to point out as a youth professional that is in fact the opposite of true. Good is always better than cute.
That's a good point.
Cute's usually mischievous, like they're trying to cover up something.
That's also
I mean,
fair.
you can be good and cute. That there's a lot of crossover there, but if you
have to pick one,
it's sort of like a if you have to choose between going and stopping. Going is preferable to stopping.
Let me put it this way, though. In the experience of the male human race, how often do we choose good over cute?
Very seldom. That's why I have to take the time to point that out. Professional courtesy. That's important.
So anyway, the point is, Freckle.
Your heart is a goddamn liar. That's what I'm taking the time to say.
So anyway, Freckle is, the last person who should be part of an underground gang, of ne'er-do-wells, right? And in fact, he was trying to get into the police force, but he was so timid he could never make it. So everything changed in this comic when these kind of mid-level gangsters, they're kind of were working under the bigger bad guy in this. They come after the Lackadaisy gang, swipe everything out of their cellar, and start shooting up the place. And our characters are all on the run. And I'm trying to find the page here. Just enjoy the artwork while I do so.
You're gonna have to go a few pages.
Yeah.
Because it's
I had it up, and then I lost it somehow.
Because it's after they keep going. You got a few more to go.
And that's right. Yeah, this all happened
because they have to go into the armory. They have to. Yeah.
We won't even get as to why this cute little girl is hanging out with these people. That's a whole nother story. But yeah, so they're hiding in the cellar, and these guys find them. Right?
You skipped one of my favorite facial expressions of
what?
the entire comic.
Which one?
I think it's the previous page.
What?
That one right there. It's the one where he's like Freckles is spilling the beans, and because Rocco or whatever Rocky is like, oh, I have no idea why this band of
right, he's the one responsible for all of this.
Yeah, I have no idea why these hicks are chasing us down and shooting up our speakeasy, and then Freckles, the innocent one, is just like, you mean it has nothing, I thought we burned down their house and then their barn, and then it exploded and we blew up their cars.
Yeah.
And he's like, thank you, that's helpful. And just this is again where Butler's
the dialogue is excellent.
To me, it's not necessarily the dialogue. She actually does fill some of these pages with a ton of dialogue. To me, again, the real strength here is her ability to work expressions and eyes, and just that subtle look that Rocky's giving Freckles, which is a smile, but it's a smile you can tell is like, shut up.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And it is difficult to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
When those of us who work in comic book scripts, sometimes we try to say, hey, I want a character who has, and we try to maybe take one emotion and then mix it with another emotion to try to come up with a more complex emotion.
Right.
And it's difficult to do that verbally, but artists, especially superhero artists who often draw characters with masks and outfits that obscure parts of the face. And as a result, they're not always the best at portraying elements of facial expressions. It can be difficult to get a nuanced facial expression. And so something in comics that is definitely a strength is when you're able to not just portray emotion, but portray shades of emotion. And in these two panels right here, we get shades of emotion. And that's something that that Butler is a master at. And take note, sequential artists, because it's something that you can definitely work to your advantage for very comedic and also dramatic effect.
Yeah. So anyway, all this is happening, and the guys are closing in on them. I found it here. And Mitzi pulls out her little miniature gun she's got on her. And of course, Rocky still, desperate to be the hero, desperate to prove that he's something to her. Takes it, and he's trying to make it work. He doesn't have a clue what he's doing. And out of nowhere, right, our police trainee just grabs the thing and nails the guy right in the head.
Yeah, there we go. And there's the boom. There's the headshot. Okay, that's appropriate for children.
Something inside Freckles snapped at that moment. And this is what we see, I think, portrayed fairly well in the cartoon.
Also,
is that
I agree with Matt C. Comment there.
You know what, Matt? I'm gonna see you in like 2 days, so you be careful with the amount of.
But yeah, I think this is the moment that changed this comic forever for everybody. Was like suddenly the bar got raised infinitely. And we have this Jekyll and Hyde of a character who's normally is just the most pathetic, nothing of a character, suddenly becomes this gun-obsessed, violent maniac. And he takes out all three of these guys with extreme position. Sorry,
prejudice.
No. Precision is what I'm looking for.
I don't think he's that precise.
Running around,
blasting the Tommy gun.
Well, it's on and off. But I'm trying to get back to it here because Ivy's trying to get help for Vector because Victor.
If I could interject, Matt C had a really interesting point that I do want to touch on.
But well, hold on. Okay. The fact that he's constantly laughing like a maniac while doing this, right? You are looking into the eyes of the devil, and you're like, where the heck did this come from? And that has been the crazy on and off of his character ever since. He's kind of like the the unexpected hero who will, he's going to be a big pain in the butt 90% of the time, but whenever the chips are down, that switch comes on, and suddenly, just stand back, let Freckles do his thing.
I always thought Rocky was the irritating one who comes through in the end, because he sure knows how to dial the irritating part up.
I think he did more so in that cartoon with the explosions than he ever did in the comic.
In the comic, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that. But Matt C says, my one big criticism, it's funny how Lackadaisy went black-white for so long, and yet everything is this neutral gray tone with no bold contrasts, no sense of dramatic lighting or shadows.
I mean, we're seeing some dramatic lighting right here, I would say.
Yeah, but it's dramatic in the scene, but it's not like we're talking about spot blacks like Mignola really make your eye
pop. That is true. Yes.
Or Miller. Yeah. Like Sin City level of like, yeah.
You also don't see it going back to working for the strip and not the page until later. You don't see it in any sense of page flow when it comes to the dramatic lighting. It's like it's in the panel, but it's not directing you.
I'm glad you guys are bringing that up, because it led to one of my overall criticisms of the work, where the art just kind of bleeds together and kind of washes. And so, like, when you look at individual parts, you go, wow, that's really well done. But when you look at it as a whole, it kind of like, it ends up being a bit muddy. It doesn't have the sort of, anchoring that type of shading would do.
I wouldn't be surprised if she draws these in black and white, and there is more of a contrast at first, but then she overlays the gray.
Yeah, well, as a result, kind of like what Matt C is saying and what Metal said, is that as I read it, I found myself, my eyes getting just kind of...
cut out there.
Of modern coloring.
Here's a great way to describe it. Matt says it's anthro pinup lighting.
Jeez.
You'll also notice that she doesn't do this anymore, but back then, each of these pages is basically made out of a series of strips. You may not even notice it until I said that, right? But
no, it's pretty noticeable.
No, I saw it. We talked about that earlier. About it.
Did you? Oh, I missed that part.
Yeah.
It's just very interesting.
You were looking for the headshot, I think.
If you wanted an actual weekly comic or something, you could have this in a newspaper where it was a slowly ongoing story, a magazine.
That actually probably could have been more of a strength, though. I mean, if you just release them strips at a time and then compile them later, you'd probably get more regularly.
I believe she has in like on Deviant Art accounts and things like that. Actually.
It's probably how the patron users or whatever probably got it for a while. It's like, hey, here's the strip, here's a strip, here's a strip, and then we'll just compile it for the upload.
I think Lackadaisy, and this is something Matt mentioned, is that I think Lackadaisy works better as a strip, and I think that the later pages. Did you want to? We've already looked at the modern stuff, but the modern pages where she's doing more of the just comic book page stuff, I don't think it plays to her strengths. Because I don't think she's as good at page layout for like single pages. And so like if she just released this as like a kind of like newspaper strip, I think I would be way more appreciative of her work as a whole. Because I think she thinks better in strips. Some people do. And it definitely takes work.
At which point she did start doing that, because she was going for a while with this format. You can see how she's already getting into that multicolor structure here, but the actual page structure is still the same.
Like I said, I feel like in a way, I feel like Lackadaisy is it starts overcooking itself in style.
This page really has got some Winsor McKay layout feel to it.
Oh yeah, she definitely went all out with the artwork.
No, I like that.
Things of the time period.
Well, also because
very Wonderland as well.
And Winsor McKay's stuff, it's this. I mean, he did a lot of experimenting with it, but it's very much like influenced by storybook art and strips, like as together, like comic strips together. So it's this very interesting blending of those sort of elements, and especially when you combine the dailies with the Sunday pages.
I do have to point out Windsor is much.
He's
Windsor
better.
did.
I'm not
Okay, all right.
Windsor definitely better. It means Windsor.
No, I'm just saying it's reminiscent of it. I'm not saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Do you notice how the background here is these checker pattern in every single background thing? And as he starts to go crazy with drinking the maple syrup, it suddenly goes all wishy-washy and weird, right? And then back in the real world, he's still got the checkerboard pattern.
Matt says, I need to buy this. We should all buy it. If you want to buy it, I think Lackadaisy Volume 1 is for sale. Is 2? Did she sell Volume 2 as well?
Wouldn't be surprised by now. I'll give you the.
But it's not that long. Like Volume 1 is like what 60 pages, and Volume 2 is like 80. It's not a long work overall. 20 years to release like 200 pages of material. It's like I said, it's puts Ethan Van Sciver to shame for sloth.
So we need to not have Ethan see this, otherwise he'll get even slower.
I don't think Ethan watches my show.
I'm putting the link in the chat here.
So late strips. Oh yeah, Matt. We mentioned this earlier. She it's been 2 years since her last page. Now she was working on but she didn't actually like. She was like creative. She was involved in the directing a bit of the animated short.
Volume 1 is out of print.
Well, that sounds like a problem she should fix soon.
Yeah,
to eBay.
Yeah. I never got to get my copy.
Well, you can read the whole thing for free on the internet, so you know you can be like me and be a cheapskate. Just read it
on Webtoon.
Oh, no, it is not finished. I think her work, has done well monetarily for herself. She is able to do comics full time. So I don't think that's in doubt.
And animation.
Yeah.
Well, and then of course they did the crowdfunding campaign to do the pilot, and they asked for $83,000. They completed their goal the first day.
Yeah, she made like 300 grand on that.
Yeah, and ended up with like 300. Yeah.
Okay, whoa, hold on. Pause. Pull up Matt's last.
Pause.
Okay, Matt says, "Oh, it's not finished yet. Hard pass." Excuse me, sir. Wait, was it your whole pitch of indie comics? Come along with me as we go on this journey together. And
I have that feeling towards a lot of stuff though. Like I'll be like, oh man, I'd rather just binge it when it's done. But
I know, but it was like
I think that's part of Matt's current feud with Doug TenNapel.
So yeah, Matt, see, the answer to your question is at least half of that has been because they actually stopped the comic in order to do the pilot instead. I think from here on out, they may go back to finishing the last little bit in the comic that's needed, but I believe the goal is to hopefully turn this into a show from here on out.
She better finish the comic. Like that.
So here's the thing about the comic.
Hold the phone. Okay. To quote Richard C. Meyer, dance with the partner that you came with. You came with comics. People loved your comic. You don't ditch comics and go, oh, I'll finish the rest in the animated series. Screw that. You finish your darn comic.
So here's the thing. Everything in the pilot clearly happens after anything that happens in the comic. So my guess is if they were going to finish anything, it would probably just be the amount we need to get us up to the pilot so we understand everything that's happening.
That would be a mistake. That is a huge mistake.
But
I'm tell the same story twice at the same time.
No, because here's the problem. Okay, these shows often. Okay, animation is not cheap. Animation is not fast. It's even slower than doing the comic book pages at the release date that she's doing it. And animation at the style and quality that she demands of her work, you will get 1, maybe 3 episodes before she dies. So if you like Lackadaisy and you want like the story that she's kind of creating, this like noir interconnected mystery that's going to like eventually pay off with some drastic revelations for these characters, you need to encourage her to finish the comic. Because if she gets caught up in this animated world, like I hate to make the dire prediction, but you will get like 3 episodes and it'll be like an hour's worth and it'll tell like a fraction of the story. And then we'll all be in like our 60s.
That's if they're doing it by themselves. But no, clearly the idea of making this pilot is to try to be able to pitch it to someone with.
Because
but we already talked about you're not going to make this outside of the indie scene.
Well, not necessarily. So VisiPop got to deal with
this.
So VisiPop got to deal with A24 Studios for Has Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss. So they're the type of studio that has the money. So long as the price point is right, they can take a bite at this.
How many episodes of Has Been Hotel have we gotten in the past like 5 years?
Past 5 years, we've gotten an entire season.
I mean,
of Hell of a Boss, right?
Hell of a Boss. Has Been Hotel, no. We've
not
gotten
all
like
projects are successful.
So that's what I'm trying to say is that like you're putting way too many eggs into this basket that pays off fewer times than comics do. For you know what I'm saying? Like to like succeed in the indie, she already is a success. She already is a success as an indie comic creator. If she makes the leap, and I'm not saying that she is, but if she does is considering making the leap of, I'm going to transition from comics to animation, then you're putting a lot of eggs in a basket that fails way more often than it succeeds. And like making $300,000 is great for an indie comic. It is drop in the bucket for what you need to successfully fund a full animated series that's going to do justice to the amount of depth that she is channeling in the comic. I'm sorry. And she did, like I said, the pilot did not bring the depth that the comic has. The animation is a great thing to watch after you enjoy the comic, but none of the like historical depths, like the fact that like every single panel is something I researched, like you can't do that with every single frame of animation. The animation has to follow a particular plot. Most of what happened in the animated thing was an action scene. There was very little of the historical depth. And that was the entire, that was the first campaign. It was essentially just an action scene.
Also, the Has Been Hotel season has been filmed. It's going to be released this summer, and they've had the 2 Hell of a Boss seasons
yet. So I only count the 1 episode until it actually airs.
That's what I'm saying. We've got 1 episode, fair. And how many years has it taken? Like,
so here's an interesting idea. What if she finishes the comic now with the artwork of the pilot?
So, who knows?
Probably get done faster.
7 says it takes an army of MFers to make a quality animation. True, you need an army of slave labor from Thailand, and not
on this one.
And Matt C says,
"Hey, they have a North Korean animation studio that several French companies have used."
There we go. Okay,
I believe this was 168 people working out of their own homes.
Oh my gosh!
So anyway, I would like to take one moment to point out this page from the Lackadaisy main page. It says that the latest comic is called Epithet. So the idea that you may get much more than the story that they're working on right now ever finished, I would have my doubts.
Well, it's that's not epitaph. Epithet is just like it's like an insult.
Okay.
Yeah. If it said,
you're right. You're right.
Epilogue or anything. Yeah.
You're right. I got the word wrong. Now I look like a moron. Well, never mind.
I didn't get that at first. Okay.
Go back to Cartoonicus screen, so I'll turn off my camera in shame.
Oh gosh, you really did.
I like Matt C there. She was a crack sailboat pilot. I would even say maybe a yacht, like a nice like luxury yacht. So she thought she could try to captain the Titanic. again, I think we're kind of like theory crafting here. I would hope that she fully intends to get back on track and finish the comic story that is her life's work. I think it would be,
but I still want to see.
It would be odd. It would be very odd for her not to.
Turns out everyone's wrong. After it catches up, the rest of it's just going to be done in light novel format.
Oh, it's a light novel.
Anyway, we're not giving enough credit here to Fable Seagull, who was actually the producer of this pilot. Tracer was certainly involved, but it was Fable who kind of put the entire project together and controlled that 68 people. Most of whom I think probably just had their careers boosted by this one project.
Sure.
If not purely because of the attention they're going to get a result. One of them was, where is he? This guy I've actually been following. It's very interesting. He actually, I followed one of his tutorials on coloring. It helps me out a bit. But he talked about how personal the process of making this animation was. How they would actually really be swapping their stuff back on like live streams and all, because they were all working from home all the time. And because of that, people would come up with an idea over here, and then that would affect somebody else's idea over here. So it was a very different experience from what you usually get in an animation studio. And he talked about how like he was just animating this simple animation where Freckles is pulling a box along and he's supposed to drop it. And at the end, he just threw in this extra little moment where he kind of collapses in exhaustion, right? And Fable was streaming it at the exact moment when she noticed that it was in there. So she's like, okay, here, I'll put that in. And she had no idea it was coming, right? And so like, this is her reaction.
Was actually streaming at that time, and this is their reaction.
This thing that got added into the animation. Freckles just collapsed at the end. This is great. Oh my god. Okay.
Right. So there was actually a lot of experimentation and creativity that was encouraged this entire time that they were making that. And I think that's
you
really
have
something
to an
cool.
adaptation though.
What's that?
As you kind of have to an adaptation though. Right,
But
especially from comic, because like you could use comic as a storyboard if you want, like if you were trying to adapt that way, but there's so much creativity that has to go in like in betweens and everything, and especially because this takes place, as you said, after the events of the comic, like almost everything had to have been creative.
Right, but usually it's you have one director telling you, it's like, here, I need this from you and I need this from you, and then you're going to put it all together. Whereas in this case, because these were people all just working from their home and they got so involved with each other that they were constantly part of each other's processes, being able to brainstorm and give each other ideas and stuff. He talks about being able to sit in on, remain quiet. We have this crazy video showing how they came up with Freckles supposed to be laughing while he's doing the gunfire, and the voice actor was having trouble getting into character, so they called up the guy who played Victor, right? And this conversation happened. If you're trying to get him in character, right? There it is, right? So I just think it's a fascinating little experiment from, we probably are not going to get such personal touches like that.
Oh, I was going to say, was I the only one who couldn't hear what was going on there?
There was a whole lot of dead air.
Did I forget the
or whatever?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think you're still on the last one.
I'm so stupid. Let me try that again.
Yeah, but what you're describing though, it's definitely very common in long distance collabs, especially web stuff. Like I've told you before, I spend a lot of time on Newgrounds. Yeah. I'm in a lot of groups and stuff, so I've been around people who like in their calls when they're working on things, and you often get this type of like play around when people are working on animations and stuff like that over long distances.
That's cool. But still, let me go ahead and play this before you.
I'll fight you right here and now.
Sorry.
No.
Excuse me.
So they're trying to get the character of.
Believe I said that you do not.
What did you say to me, punk?
Punk.
I'll fight you right here and now.
My schedule is open a little later if you want. I am on the clock.
What?
Right, so there's the laugh, right? Now it's all what they were trying to get him to do is to get him to get that laugh right down so they could record it. And this all happened over Discord.
As it should.
Yeah, but this again, this is common stuff. I think you see this a lot in animation, voice acting, and stuff like that.
Excuse me. Sorry, keep coughing. If I didn't say in the beginning, I'm fighting a cold here.
I will say that I do appreciate the pilot. I will say overall, Lackadaisy is not a work that suits my tastes very much. Although I will say I do like the 1920s aesthetic, and I think we should get more stories in that aesthetic. So keep making them.
Well, and you're talking about like, oh, it's if they were people, they'd be just another mobster story, and I'm sitting here thinking, why would that be bad? Do you guys like not have souls or something?
I'll admit I would not mind to see some Dick Tracy again.
Yes. Yes, Dick Tracy is amazing.
So, but as I saw the animation, it did remind me of some others that I do like Big Top Burger.
Oh, I love Big Top Burger,
which is one of the best indie animations that we've got.
Worthy Kids, that's such a good one. Yeah,
it's so good.
There's another one that takes a really long time for things to come out for such short things, but it's understandable.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm always happy when a Big Top Burger episode comes out. Chat, go watch Big Top Burger. Yeah, okay. Abigail's got good taste.
Yeah, you can watch like the whole first season in like one video, and then you can just catch up on the other ones.
Yeah,
I've never even heard of Big Top.
The end of the second season was like really a real nice ramp up.
Oh yeah.
Cesare is actually my favorite character. Brilliantly voice acted.
Have we, in fact, discussed all of the Lackadaisy we can handle without actually going through doing a deep dive review on the
Yeah, I mean, I could go over all the characters and stuff, but I think we have roughly touched on the importance. If you are interested,
so it's Lackadaisy.com, right?
There are probably about 5.
Oh, you cut out the roboted there for a second.
Nope, I was saying there's probably about 5 or 6 important links that I'll start putting in the chat right now.
Sweet. While you're saying that, I will say that I know I've applied a critical lens here. I've said the things that I don't like. Like I said, overall, this work isn't one that speaks to me that much. But I will say that the comic represents some very important things, I think, to all of us as indie creators. And like I said, the depth of craft that's being applied here, the dedication of the creator, and the fact that she also has been able to generate unarguably a dedicated fan base that has been able to provide a living for her. I think she's got like 1,500 patrons. And that's not even including the money that she makes off of, books that she's sold, and the Kickstarter. So she's living the indie dream in a way that very few of us are able to reach. And there's something to be said for that. And there are things.
And none of us.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to put that on the table to remind everybody. None of us.
This should be An encouragement to shoot for the stars.
So Reese, for $300,000, could you imagine a Forces of Good and Evil pilot?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think I would want to do it. The Forces as a animation.
I could see if you got like, is it Mike Judge? You got Mike Judge to do it.
Yeah, maybe Mike Judge. But even then, I wouldn't do Forces. I'd want to look at a different property for something with that. I don't know.
So there's clearly things that this creator, that Judah Butler is doing correctly in nurturing a fan base. There's a need, an artistic need, an itch that is getting scratched that people go, oh yeah, I need more of that. So, she has found a niche and it works very, very well for her, even if she releases a strip like once, every blue moon. So.
Well, I mean, hey, Rob Liefeld got away with it.
Yeah, but did he though? People put him on blast, so for such a
he keeps getting work.
He earned a very, very negative reputation. Okay,
all right, she's doing better than him.
I know. That's the weird part, is that I don't think she's taken the hit to rep that I could tell. So she has, I think, fostered a type of audience. This is something that Matt C, I think, has commented on, that she has generated an audience that it seems to be, at least from what I can tell, happy to pay for her rate of work, which is really what you want. So more power to her.
Yeah, all I get is just like random donations in very odd intervals. That's nothing consistent. So
yeah, we have
her.
At Go Comics, we have 2 patrons that are donated to us on the monthly, and I definitely appreciate the guys. I don't know that they want to be publicly noticed or not, and I should reach out and ask them. But
you're not going to have that list of people at the end of your video.
Well, I would feel weird about that, because I mean, it's just sort of like, because I wouldn't necessarily want to be like people to know what I'm spending my money on just because I'm spending my money on it.
Yeah,
so,
I have the top 10 slots, but there's only 5 people right now. On the side, on the website, at the very top, you can see it, top 10 donors. 2 of them have requested to be anonymous, and I give them that option, but it still says like anonymous donor 1 and anonymous donor 2, and it just
so I think the real key is for us to not speed up our production, but to slow it down to
yes. I'm already ahead of you on that.
Glacial. We're all in a competition, not releasing anything.
Hold up,
I went a year between 2 pages, so
I mean, Twitless, why produce something when you can produce a hat between pages and in a box? A box to put things in, and maybe some 3D printed action figures.
Flyfrox Pro, is this that woke furry thing?
I don't know if it's woke.
I'm not entirely sure where that
team is definitely woke. I will tell you that.
We addressed the furry question about an hour ago, and I'm not going to repeat it right now.
No. The production team for Lackadaisy is super woke. If you've seen a lot of the stuff talking about it, they were talking about all like the alphabet soup people on the team and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, the Kickstarter page was like a who's who of like Rainbow Mafia. Yeah.
That's just because there's a lot of artists on the team. It's going to happen.
This is
why is that a thing? We need to where are all of the Ayn Rand objectivists conquering the arts?
So, I'm technically an artist, okay? I will not stand for this.
Where's the Steve Ditko school? Oh wait, he locked himself in a tower for his entire life.
Zack Snyder is trying to make the Fountainhead. He's been trying to make that for 10 years.
Oh jeez. The Fountainhead is such I have such conflicted opinions about the Fountainhead. Oh my god, I can't even, because like many of the characters of the Fountainhead, there's great moments of the Fountainhead. Howard Rourke is the worst human who has ever walked this planet. He's a terrible person.
What you got to realize is that Ayn Rand doesn't write characters; she writes metaphors.
Well, but some of the plot is great, and like the way she the buildings she describes, like I love architecture, so like I love that part of it.
Fine,
I just really wish that somebody would like there would be a moment where Howard Rourke would like walk out on steel and like slip on a peanut that some bird had left there, and he'd just fall to his death. Just street pizza.
I'll put it this way: Archer, which is one of my favorite animated shows, made this hilarious joke once, and the joke was Archer says, "If I wanted to murder subtext, I would dig up Ayn Rand and give her a pen."
Oh wow!
Yeah. So actually, I think when it comes to characters, the problem is she can only write one side of it, because the villains, like the antagonists, are like basically spot on too. Even like some of the things we're seeing today, it's the protagonists that are the problem with their writing.
Hold up,
I don't know. In Atlas Shrugged, none of the characters have any depth aside from "this is the thing I represent."
Well, no, I mean, there's some of that. There's some of that conflict in Fountainhead. I can't remember the characters' names right now because they have difference in values, right? So I can't remember. There's one that's like the not main, but one of the side antagonists for Rourke. He's not a bad guy. He just doesn't agree with the point of view so strongly that it ends up being pathetic. But he doesn't seem evil. He just seems and
there's a character like that in Atlas Shrugged. He ends up just getting left in the dark.
Well, yeah. The one that
guy who's still running the trains.
Tux. Yeah.
But he's not smart enough to make it to the land of geniuses. But and I like Ayn Rand. I think she does a lot really well. So don't take me as hating on her.
Yeah.
No, but I will say it's frustrating to read thousands of pages of her work when the characters are so one-dimensional.
What she does well. She does very, very well. And I got to give her a major props too, because like the some of her prose is stiff, but some of her prose is beautiful. And the fact that she's coming to the English language as a second language as an adult and being able to write what she did write when she absolutely hits it, I'm like, I couldn't do that in Russian. I could spend 20 years studying Russian and I wouldn't be able to come close to what she did with English. I mean, and I can do it in English, but I couldn't do it in Russian.
Do you remember that comic book series where a guy did a comics about different philosophers who did a comic on Ayn Rand?
No.
I gotta see if I can dig that one up. But it was like there's someone who did a comic of her career.
All right, so I didn't mean to derail. I didn't want to mean derail.
You know what? We started off the night on a derail. I suppose it's only appropriate.
Yeah, there you go.
Sorry, Cartoonicus.
You brought up the Fountainhead. I have to talk about it.
No, we talked about Lackadaisy for most of the show. We could talk about it more if we had all did more homework.
Mm-hmm. So I do want to take out one last note on the Ayn Rand train, because this is fascinating. So I'm a big fan of architecture and architectural history, and I appreciated that part of Ayn Rand and the way she kind of pulled from real history a little bit to play some stuff in her stories with talking about the architects of the Gilded Age and that kind of stuff. I recently, a couple years ago, read a book called The Devil in the White City, and it is about a serial killer whose name escapes me, and it's about the Columbian Exhibition. And the people that were involved in the Columbian Exhibition. But the fact that I had read The Fountainhead and read about some of the conflicts that Rand had used to inform the characters in The Fountainhead gave me a really unique appreciation of the political conflicts within Chicago architects during the Columbian Exhibition. So if you've made it through The Fountainhead, go read Devil in the White City. It's fascinating. And that's it. That's it. No, it's not comics. There you go.
Until next time, keep reading Ayn Rand.
Yeah. Well,
keep reading comics and watching animation.
Yeah, I know.
And,
that's what we should say.
Next week,
keep reading webcomics.
I don't know what we're doing next week, guys. I don't know, but I do know that.
Do you watch your night off again?
Maybe, I don't know. We'll figure it out. But I do know that I graduate high school or college or whatever the heck I've been doing for 3 years.
He's getting his GED.
I don't know, man. I don't even know what it is anymore.
Okay, we gotta throw him.
We're gonna stick some letters behind my name, and I'm gonna ignore them for the rest of my life.
We gotta throw him a
That happens
graduation
in like
party.
4 weeks, so I'm happy. So I'm happy to see the tail end of this experience. And you guys out there in internet land, tune in. I guarantee you, we are getting a Forces page this weekend. I'm lettering it today, so it's actually done. I had to do a stupid paper that took all of my weekend last week, but I got it. It's all colored. It's gonna be great. You never believe it. Mrs. H is knocking this out of the park. You're not gonna believe it. So read some webcomics, and if you want to read mine, leave me a comment to let me know what you thought about it. And we'll catch all of you guys next time on the old internet on the Mattriarchy, the best show that nobody talks about the next day. You guys have a good one. Bye.